The stars near Meridian Station had always been quiet. For 3 years, nothing more exciting than a supply ship or a passing comet had come through this part of space. That was why, when the sensors on the small human outpost lit up all at once, nobody believed it at first. A technician named Owen Baxter blinked at his screen twice before he called his supervisor over. What he was looking at was not one ship, or 10, but a fleet so large it blotted out the star field behind it. Far above the planet, dozens of alien warships dropped out of warp in tight formation. Their hulls were dark red and curved like claws, built for intimidation as much as for war. At the front of this fleet sat the command vessel of High Overseer Draxum, a being who had spent 40 years conquering weaker worlds and had never once lost a battle. He stood on his bridge with his arms crossed, looking down at the small blue-green planet on his view screen with something close to boredom. "This is it?" Draxum asked, his voice low and unimpressed. "This is the border of human territory?" Beside him stood Fleet Marshal Yalan, a more careful and quieter officer who had served under Draxum for over a decade. Yalan studied the readings on his own console before answering. "Sensors show only a handful of ships in orbit. No large fleet. No visible defense grid. It matches the intelligence reports." "Then it will be an easy conquest," Draxum said, satisfied. "Just like the last 6. Not far from Draxum's ship sat a smaller, unarmed vessel belonging to a neutral observer named Ambassador Celis. She was not human, but she had spent years working alongside human diplomats and knew things that Draxum did not. When she requested to speak with him, he allowed it more out of habit than respect. "High Overseer," Celis said carefully, her voice measured, "I would ask you to reconsider this attack." Draxum let out a short laugh. "You asked me to reconsider attacking a colony defended by 3 outdated cruisers. I ask you to reconsider attacking humans," Celis said. "Their strength is not always visible. I have seen this before." Draxum waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Every species says the same thing about their own homeworld. I have heard it from a dozen dying empires. It changes nothing." He turned to his communications officer. "Send them the ultimatum. Surrender the colony, or be destroyed within the hour." The message reached Meridian Station within seconds, and from there it was relayed instantly to the nearest human warship patrolling the sector, a vessel named the Steadfast. On its bridge stood Commander Dale Rourke, a man who had spent 15 years in the fleet and had learned long ago that panic solved nothing. When the ultimatum appeared on his screen, he read it once, then read it again, his expression unchanged. "They're not bluffing," said Lieutenant Priya Anand from the tactical station beside him. Her eyes moved quickly over the sensor data streaming in. "That's a full invasion fleet. At least 60 warships, maybe more hiding just outside our scanner range." "I can see that," Rourke said calmly. "Commander, our closest reinforcements are 2 days away. We have 3 ships in this system. Should I sound general alert?" Rourke did not answer right away. He walked slowly toward the main view screen, watching the alien fleet grow larger as it approached. To anyone else on the bridge, it might have looked like fear holding him still. In truth, he was thinking. "Do not sound the alert yet," he finally said. "Send a message to Fleet Command. Use the priority channel. Tell them exactly what we're seeing, ship counts, formation, everything." "And what do we tell the aliens?" Priya asked. "Nothing yet," Rourke said. "Let them wonder why we're not panicking." Aboard Draxum's flagship, the silence from the human side was starting to bother Fleet Marshal Yalan more than he wanted to admit. In his experience, weaker species either surrendered quickly out of fear or fought back immediately out of desperation. The humans were doing neither. They were simply watching. "Overseer," Yalan said quietly, "should their silence concern us?" "It should tell you they are afraid and do not know what to say," Draxum replied without looking away from the view screen. "Do not mistake confusion for confidence, Yalan. I have seen this 100 times." Far across the sector, in a command center hidden deep beneath the surface of a heavily fortified human world, Fleet Admiral Grace Whitlock received Rourke's report within minutes of it being sent. She read through the numbers twice, her face calm but focused. A junior officer nearby looked nervous as he waited for her reaction. "Admiral, that's a massive fleet. Should we scramble every available ship to Meridian?" Whitlock set the report down and looked at the star map on the wall, tracing the distance between Meridian Station and several key positions marked in blue. "Not yet," she said. "Get me a secure line to Commander Rourke. And quietly, begin moving the 3rd and 7th fleets toward these coordinates." She tapped a section of space several hours away from Meridian. "No warp trails. No communication chatter. I want them arriving dark." "Yes, Admiral. And the colony itself?" "Rourke can stall them," Whitlock said simply. "He's done it before." Back at Meridian Station, the countdown from the alien ultimatum continued ticking down. Civilians in the colony's shelters watched the skies nervously through reinforced windows, unaware that far above them, a much larger plan was already quietly moving into motion. Commander Rourke stood on the bridge of the Steadfast, hands clasped behind his back, staring calmly at the wall of enemy ships filling his screen. "Message incoming from the alien flagship," his communications officer said. "They're asking for our response." Rourke allowed himself the smallest, barely visible smile. "Tell them," he said, "that we're still discussing it." On the alien flagship, Draxum received the reply with a mixture of confusion and irritation. Discussing it, as if a handful of outdated ships had any choice in the matter at all. He turned to Yalan, shaking his head. "You see? Confusion, just as I said." Yalan said nothing, but for the first time since the fleet had arrived in this system, a small, uneasy feeling settled into his chest that he could not quite explain. 2 days passed since the alien fleet had first arrived at Meridian Station, and in that time, something strange had happened. Instead of surrendering or fighting back with full force, the humans had done neither. Small skirmishes broke out here and there, single ships trading fire before pulling back, but nothing that looked like a real defense. To Draxum, this only confirmed what he already believed. "They fight like frightened children," he said, watching a replay of the latest skirmish on his bridge. A single human cruiser had exchanged fire with 3 alien scout ships before retreating in what looked like disarray, venting smoke from a damaged engine. Fleet Marshal Yalan watched the same footage with a different expression. He replayed it twice, then a 3rd time, slowing it down. "Overseer, look at the retreat pattern. It is not random. The ship turns at exactly the same angle each time. The venting gas is symmetrical, almost too clean." Draxum barely glanced at the screen. "You see patterns because you are looking for them, Yalan. This is what fear looks like. I have watched 100 defeated fleets retreat exactly this way." What Draxum did not know, and what Yalan was beginning to suspect, was that every skirmish so far had been carefully planned. Aboard the Steadfast, Commander Dale Rourke sat in his private quarters reviewing sensor logs with Lieutenant Priya Anand standing across from him. On the table between them was a holographic display showing the movement of both fleets over the past 2 days. "They're getting bolder," Priya said, pointing at a cluster of alien ships that had crept closer to the outer edge of the system. "Overconfidence is setting in exactly like the Admiral predicted." "Good," Rourke said. "That's what we want." "I still don't love pretending to lose, Commander," Priya admitted. "Feels wrong, even if it's working." Rourke allowed a rare, tired smile. "It's not pretending to lose, Lieutenant. It's controlling how they see us. There's a difference." He tapped the display, zooming out to show the wider star map. Small blue markers, invisible to alien sensors, showed the slow, careful movement of 2 entire human fleets converging from opposite directions. "Every hour they think we're weak is another hour Admiral Whitlock gets her ships into position." Far away, aboard her flagship hidden deep within a dense asteroid field, Fleet Admiral Grace Whitlock studied the same star map from her own command chair. The 3rd and 7th fleets had been moving for nearly 40 hours without triggering a single alien sensor alert. Advanced cloaking systems, developed quietly over the past decade specifically for a scenario like this one, kept every ship hidden from view. "Position report," Whitlock said. 3rd Fleet is 6 hours from the rendezvous point," her tactical officer replied. 7th Fleet is 8 hours out. Both fleets remain undetected. And the minefield? Fully deployed and camouflaged as standard shipping lane debris, exactly as planned. If the alien fleet advances along the corridor Commander Rourke has been steering them toward, they will fly directly into it. Whitlock nodded slowly. This was the part of any operation she disliked most, the long stretch of waiting while pieces moved slowly into place, each one depending on the last. She thought of the colonists on Meridian Station, watching an enemy fleet hang over their homes for days, unaware of just how carefully every second was being managed above them. Back on the alien flagship, Ambassador Celis requested another audience with Draxum, this time with less patience in her voice. She had spent the last 2 days reviewing old historical records from her people's archives, records detailing distant, half-forgotten encounters between other species and human forces. "High Overseer, I must speak with you again," she said, standing before him on the bridge. Draxum sighed, clearly tired of her warnings. "What is it this time, Ambassador?" "I found records," Celis said, holding up a datapad. "Nearly a century old. Another species, one that no longer exists in any significant numbers, encountered human forces under almost identical circumstances. A weak defense, a slow retreat, overconfidence." She paused. "They were destroyed." "Destroyed by what?" Draxum asked, unimpressed. "By 3 outdated cruisers and a handful of scared soldiers?" "By exactly that," Celis said. "That is what the records describe. A small, seemingly weak defense that lured an entire invasion fleet into a trap so complete that fewer than a dozen ships survived to report what happened." For a moment, something flickered across Draxum's face, something almost like doubt. Then it vanished, replaced by his usual certainty. "Ambassador, I appreciate your caution, truly. But I did not conquer 12 worlds by believing every old story told by frightened survivors. If humans were capable of something like that, we would have heard more than rumors and half-destroyed archives." Celis opened her mouth to argue further, then closed it. She had said what she came to say. Whatever happened next was no longer something she could control. Yelan, who had remained silent during the exchange, found himself glancing at the tactical display more often after that conversation. The human ships continued their slow, staged retreat, drawing the alien fleet deeper into a section of space marked on their charts as an ordinary supply corridor. It should have meant nothing. And yet Yelan kept noticing small details that did not quite add up: drifting cargo containers that never moved with the natural pull of gravity, sensor readings that flickered for half a second too long before stabilizing. He brought his concerns to Draxum one final time, standing at attention on the bridge as the fleet prepared to advance further into the corridor. "Overseer, I recommend we slow our approach. Send scout ships ahead to verify the safety of this route before committing the main fleet." Draxum looked at him for a long moment, then shook his head. "We have delayed enough, Yelan. Every hour we wait, the humans have more time to call for reinforcements that will never arrive in time regardless. I want this conquest finished." He turned back to the view screen, watching the corridor stretch out ahead of his fleet like an open road. "Advance the fleet. Full formation. It is time to end this." Yelan gave the order, though the uneasy feeling in his chest had grown into something closer to dread. Behind him, unseen and unheard, the human trap continued closing, one quiet, careful step at a time. The corridor stretched out like a dark river between scattered fields of rock and drifting debris. To any normal sensor sweep, it looked exactly like what the star charts claimed it to be: an old, mostly forgotten shipping lane once used by traders decades ago, before faster routes were discovered. It was the perfect place to hide a trap, precisely because nothing about it looked dangerous at all. Lieutenant Priya Anand had spent the last 6 hours watching the alien fleet's slow advance into that corridor from the tactical station aboard the Steadfast. Her fingers moved steadily across her console, tracking each ship as it crossed invisible markers only the human fleet could see. "They're committing," she said, glancing at Commander Rourke. "Full formation, no scouts ahead, no flanking positions. They're walking straight down the middle." Rourke studied the display without any visible reaction. Distance to the minefield boundary. 20 minutes at their current speed. And Admiral Whitlock's fleets. Priya checked another readout. Third Fleet has reached final position. Seventh Fleet is 30 minutes out, but close enough to hold the line if needed. She hesitated before adding, "Commander, this is really happening, isn't it? After all the planning." "It's been happening since the moment they arrived," Rourke said quietly. "We're just reaching the part where they find out." Aboard her flagship hidden within the dense cover of a nearby asteroid cluster, Fleet Admiral Grace Whitlock watched the same data streaming across her own command display. Every ship under her command remained perfectly cloaked, engines running at the lowest possible output to avoid any chance of detection. She had spent years overseeing the development of the stealth technology, now protecting her fleet, technology built specifically with a moment like this in mind. All ships, hold position, she said calmly into the fleet-wide channel. No one moves until my signal. I don't care how close they get. Understood, Admiral, came the reply from a dozen different ship captains, their voices steady despite the tension clearly present in each one. Meanwhile, aboard the alien flagship, High Overseer Draxum stood at the front of his bridge, watching the corridor open up before his fleet like the final stretch of an easy victory. Beside him, Fleet Marshal Yalan remained quiet, his eyes fixed on the sensor readouts, still searching for something he could not quite name. Overseer, Yalan finally said, I would like to request one more delay, just long enough to send a single scout ship ahead. Draxum exhaled sharply, clearly losing patience. Yalan, we are 20 minutes from Meridian Station's outer defenses. 20 minutes from finishing what should have ended 2 days ago. I will not delay this conquest any further over feelings you cannot explain. It is not just a feeling, Yalan pressed. The retreat patterns, the debris fields, the timing of every skirmish. All of it fits too well together. It feels planned. Everything feels planned when you are looking for a pattern, Draxum said, echoing his earlier dismissal. I built this fleet on decisive action, not endless hesitation. We advance. Nearby, aboard her small neutral vessel trailing just behind the main alien formation, Ambassador Celis watched the fleet continue forward with a growing sense of helplessness. She had said everything she could say, warned Draxum as clearly as she was able. Now, all she could do was watch and hope, quietly, that her warnings had at least planted enough doubt in someone's mind to matter. She opened a private channel to her own government, transmitting a short, urgent message summarizing everything she had witnessed over the past 2 days, the strange retreats, the ignored warnings, the slow, methodical advance into what she now firmly believed was a trap. If Draxum's fleet was destroyed here, she wanted at least one record of what had truly happened, uncolored by whatever excuses might come later. Back aboard the Steadfast, Commander Rourke received a final confirmation from Fleet Admiral Whitlock through a heavily encrypted channel. The message was short, only a few words, but it carried the weight of everything the past several days had been building toward. All ships in position. Awaiting your signal, Commander. Rourke read the message twice, then looked up at the view screen where the alien fleet continued its steady approach, now less than 15 minutes from the heart of the minefield. Beside him, Lieutenant Priya Anand watched him carefully, waiting. Commander, she said quietly, once we give this signal, there's no pulling back. Every ship, every mine, everything commits at once. I know, Rourke said. Are you certain they're fully inside the field before we move? Rourke glanced at the tactical display, where a soft outline marked the boundaries of the hidden minefield, invisible on any alien sensor, but perfectly clear on his own. The lead ships of the alien fleet were already crossing into it, with the bulk of their formation following close behind. Almost, he said. A few more minutes. Aboard Draxum's flagship, the corridor ahead remained calm and empty, exactly as it had appeared for the past several hours. Nothing on any sensor suggested danger. To Draxum, this only confirmed everything he had believed from the very beginning, that the humans' earlier retreats had been nothing more than desperate, disorganized fear, and that this quiet corridor was simply the final, undefended path toward an easy victory. You see, Yalan, he said, gesturing toward the empty space ahead. Nothing. No trap. No ambush. No hidden fleet. Just as I said. Yalan did not answer right away. He was staring at a small, strange fluctuation on his console, a brief flicker of interference that appeared and disappeared in less than a second, then reappeared again somewhere else entirely. It was subtle, barely noticeable, the kind of thing easily dismissed as sensor noise. But Yalan had served long enough to know that sensor noise did not usually move. Overseer, he said slowly, his voice tightening, I need to recheck something. Before Draxum could respond, the fluctuation appeared a third time, closer now, directly ahead of the lead ships. Then a fourth and a fifth, spreading outward across the corridor in a pattern too deliberate to be random interference. Draxum's earlier confidence faltered for just a moment as he leaned forward, studying the same readings Yalan had been watching. What is that? Aboard the Steadfast, Rourke watched the final alien ships cross fully into the minefield boundary. Lieutenant Priya Anand looked up at him, her hand hovering over the console, waiting for the order that both of them knew was coming. "They're fully committed, Commander," she said. "Every ship, inside the field." Rourke nodded once, calm and steady, the same way he had remained through every tense moment of the past several days. He reached forward and opened a direct channel to Fleet Admiral Whitlock. "Admiral," he said quietly, "they're in position." There was a brief pause on the other end before Whitlock's voice returned, calm and final. "Understood, Commander. Initiate the operation." Rourke closed the channel and turned to Priya. "Lieutenant," he said, "sound general alert. Signal the fleet." Priya's fingers moved quickly across her console and across the corridor, in 100 hidden positions carved carefully into the surrounding rock and debris. The trap that had taken days to build was finally ready to spring. The order to advance came from High Overseer Draxum himself, his patience finally at its end. The strange flickers on his sensors, he decided, were nothing more than old mining equipment or leftover debris from the corridor's forgotten past as a trade route. He would not let a handful of unexplained readings stop him from finishing what he had come to do. "Full advance," he commanded. "All ships forward. Finish this." Across the alien fleet, engines roared to life as every warship surged deeper into the corridor, moving faster now, eager to close the distance to Meridian Station and end the standoff once and for all. It was the exact moment Fleet Admiral Grace Whitlock had been waiting for. "All ships," she said, her voice calm but sharp across the fleet-wide channel. "Decloak and engage." What happened next took less than 30 seconds, though for those aboard Draxum's fleet, it would feel like the longest 30 seconds of their lives. All around the alien formation, space itself seemed to tear open as dozens of human warships shimmered into existence, their cloaking fields dropping away all at once. They appeared on every side, above, below, and along both flanks, forming a perfect circle around the stunned alien fleet. At the same moment, the hidden minefield activated. What had looked like ordinary drifting debris for the past several hours suddenly ignited into a coordinated wall of explosions, tearing through the outer edge of the alien formation before a single ship could react. Shields flared and failed. Hulls buckled. Entire sections of alien warships were torn apart in bursts of fire and debris. On the bridge of Draxum's flagship, alarms blared from every station at once. Officers who had spent the past 2 days confident and relaxed now scrambled desperately for their consoles, trying to make sense of an attack that had come from every direction simultaneously. "Report," Draxum shouted, gripping the edge of his command chair as the ship shuddered from a nearby explosion. "Where did they come from?" "They were cloaked," his tactical officer shouted back, voice cracking with panic. "An entire fleet, hidden this whole time. We have ships on every side, Overseer. Dozens of them." Fleet Marshal Yalan, despite the chaos, felt a strange, cold clarity settle over him. This was exactly what he had feared, exactly what the old records ambassador Celis had described. The retreats, the corridor, the overconfidence, all of it had been carefully designed to lead them here. "Overseer," he said urgently, "we need to retreat, now before." His words were cut off as another explosion rocked the ship, throwing several crew members from their stations. Outside, the battle had already turned into chaos. Human warships moved with terrifying precision, each one striking specific, calculated targets rather than simply firing blindly into the alien formation. Railgun rounds tore through unshielded hulls with pinpoint accuracy, disabling engines and weapon systems before moving on to the next target. Aboard the Steadfast, Commander Rourke watched the battle unfold across his tactical display with steady focus, occasionally issuing quiet, precise orders. "Target their command ships first," he said. "Disable, don't destroy, where possible. We want survivors who can carry a message home." "Copy that, Commander," Priya replied, already redirecting fire toward a cluster of alien cruisers attempting to regroup near the center of the formation. Elsewhere in the battle, Fleet Admiral Whitlock coordinated the wider engagement from her own flagship, watching as the alien formation, once so confident and orderly, dissolved into confused, scattered clusters of ships trying desperately to find some way out of the trap closing around them. Seventh Fleet, close the gap on the southern flank, she ordered. Don't let them regroup. Understood, Admiral. Closing now. Back aboard Draxum's flagship, the situation continued to worsen with every passing minute. Ships that should have already been destroyed by the initial minefield strike continued firing back with unsettling precision, their formations shifting and adapting far faster than anything the alien coalition had encountered before. What had begun as a straightforward conquest had turned, in the span of a single battle, into something closer to a slaughter. Overseer, our shields are failing across nearly a third of the fleet, Yulon reported, his voice tight with urgency. We are losing ships faster than we can reposition. I strongly urge an immediate retreat. Draxum stared at the tactical display, his earlier confidence completely gone, replaced now by something closer to disbelief. Ships he had commanded through a dozen successful conquests were being torn apart around him by a fleet he had dismissed as weak and disorganized only hours earlier. How? He muttered, almost to himself. How is this possible? Nearby, aboard her small neutral vessel positioned safely outside the main battle, Ambassador Celis watched the unfolding destruction with a mixture of horror and grim vindication. She had warned him. She had shown him the old records, described the pattern clearly, and he had chosen certainty over caution. Now that certainty was costing him his entire fleet. She activated her recording systems, capturing everything unfolding before her, knowing that whatever happened next would need to be documented clearly for others across the galaxy who might otherwise make the same fatal mistake. Back on the alien flagship, an explosion rocked the lower decks, knocking out power to an entire section of the ship. Emergency lighting flickered on across the bridge, casting the chaos in a dim red glow. Yulon turned to Draxum one final time, his voice firm despite the danger surrounding them. Overseer, if we do not retreat now, we will not have a fleet left to retreat with. For the first time since arriving at Meridian Station, Draxum hesitated, staring at the battle raging outside his view screen, watching as ship after ship under his command was disabled or destroyed by an enemy he had underestimated completely. The easy conquest he had promised his forces was gone, replaced instead by a battle he was now, unmistakably, losing. Smoke drifted through the corridors of Draxum's flagship as damage control teams rushed from one failing system to another, trying desperately to keep the ship functional under the relentless human assault outside. On the bridge, Draxum stood gripping the edge of his command chair, watching a battle that had, in less than an hour, completely reversed everything he believed about the fight ahead of him. Overseer, 3 more cruisers have lost main power, an officer reported, his voice strained. The Velkarn and Threshold are no longer responding at all. Draxum said nothing, his eyes fixed on the tactical display where human warships continued moving with a coordination that seemed almost impossible. Ships that should have been simple, individual targets instead worked together seamlessly, one vessel drawing enemy fire while another moved into position for a precise, disabling strike. Aboard the Steadfast, Commander Dale Rourke guided his own ship directly toward the heart of the battle, angling to close the distance with Draxum's flagship itself. Beside him, Lieutenant Priya Anand tracked the shifting positions of both fleets with practiced focus. Commander, their flagship is trying to fall back toward the rear of the formation, she said. Looks like they're finally considering retreat. Then we make sure they understand retreat isn't as simple as it sounds, Rourke replied. Bring us in closer. Target their maneuvering thrusters, not the hull. Disabling shot, not a killing one, Priya confirmed, already adjusting targeting solutions. Understood. The Steadfast surged forward, weaving between drifting wreckage and scattered debris with practiced precision, closing the gap toward Draxum's flagship faster than the larger, more cumbersome alien vessel could react. Around them, other human warships continued their coordinated assault, systematically dismantling what remained of the alien formation piece by piece. What struck Fleet Marshal Yulon most, even amid the chaos, was how differently the humans fought compared to every other species he had encountered in his long career. There was no wasted movement, no unnecessary aggression. Every strike seemed calculated toward a specific purpose, weakening engines here, disabling weapons there, targeting command structures with an accuracy that felt almost surgical. Overseer, Yolande said again, more forcefully this time, we must retreat. Immediately. If we hold position any longer, we will lose the flagship itself. Draxum's jaw tightened, pride and disbelief warring visibly across his face. I have never retreated from a battle in my life, Yolande. Then this will be the first time, Yolande said bluntly, or it will be the last battle you ever fight. Before Draxum could respond, a powerful impact rocked the entire ship, throwing several crew members from their stations. Alarms blared as a targeted strike tore through the flagship's primary thruster array, crippling its ability to maneuver. On the view screen, the Steadfast came into full view, closing the distance with terrifying speed. They've disabled our engines, the tactical officer reported, panic clear in his voice. We can't retreat even if we wanted to, Overseer. We're stationary. For a long moment, Draxum said nothing at all, staring at the human warship now looming directly ahead of his own crippled flagship. Around them, the battle continued to rage, but the outcome, once so certain in his mind, now felt entirely reversed. Aboard her hidden command vessel, Fleet Admiral Grace Whitlock watched the collapse of the alien formation with the same calm focus she had maintained throughout the entire operation. Reports continued streaming in from across the battlefield, each one confirming what she had already suspected. The alien coalition, so confident and unified only hours earlier, was now scattered, disorganized, and thoroughly defeated. Admiral, her communications officer said, Commander Rourke reports the alien flagship is disabled and unable to maneuver. He's requesting instructions. Whitlock considered this for a moment. Total destruction would have been simple, and after everything the Coalition had threatened against Meridian Station, few would have blamed her for choosing it. But that had never been the point of this operation, not really. Tell Commander Rourke to hold position, she said. Disable their remaining weapons, but do not destroy the flagship. I want them to survive this. I want them to remember it. The order reached Rourke moments later, and he relayed it calmly to his crew. Target their remaining weapon systems. Leave the flagship intact. Aboard Draxum's ship, the final volley of precise, disabling fire tore through what remained of the flagship's offensive capabilities, leaving it powerless and drifting amid the wreckage of what had once been an overwhelming invasion fleet. Silence fell across the bridge as the crew slowly realized there was nothing left to fight with. Nearby, aboard her small vessel, Ambassador Celis watched the final moments of the battle unfold with a heavy, complicated mixture of relief and sorrow. She had not wanted this outcome. She had hoped, until the very last moment, that her warnings might have been enough to prevent it entirely. But at least, she thought quietly, it was finally over. Fleet Marshal Yolande turned to Draxum, his voice quiet now, stripped of the urgency it had carried only minutes earlier. Overseer, the fleet is defeated. We have no weapons, no engines, and no way to continue this fight. Draxum remained silent for a long moment, staring out at the drifting wreckage of ships he had commanded for years, ships now reduced to little more than scattered debris across the corridor. Finally, he lowered himself slowly into his command chair, the weight of the defeat settling over him fully for the first time. Open a channel, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Tell them we surrender. Silence hung over the corridor once the fighting finally stopped, broken only by the slow, drifting movement of wreckage scattered across what had once been an ordinary, forgotten stretch of space. Where dozens of alien warships had advanced with confidence only hours earlier, now only a handful remained intact, disabled and powerless among the ruins of their own fleet. Final count, Commander, Lieutenant Priya Anand said quietly, reading from her console. 14 alien ships destroyed outright, 31 disabled and unable to maneuver. The rest scattered or fled the system entirely. Rourke nodded slowly, feeling none of the satisfaction he might have expected after such a decisive victory. Only a quiet, tired relief that it was finally over. Any word from Admiral Whitlock? She's requesting a shuttle be prepared, Priya said. She wants to meet with the alien overseer personally. Several hours later, Aboard the crippled remains of Draxum's flagship, Fleet Admiral Grace Whitlock stepped through the airlock accompanied by a small security detail. The corridors around her showed clear signs of the battle's toll: scorched walls, flickering emergency lighting, and crew members who watched her pass with expressions caught somewhere between fear and exhausted resignation. She found High Overseer Draxum waiting on what remained of his bridge, seated in his command chair with none of the arrogance he had carried only a day earlier. Fleet Marshal Yalon stood beside him, silent and watchful. "Admiral," Draxum said stiffly, rising slowly to his feet. "I assume you've come to discuss terms." "I have," Whitlock said, her tone calm, without any trace of cruelty or triumph. "But first, I want to be clear about something. Humanity did not want this battle, Overseer. We did not seek out this system, or this fight. You brought 60 warships to our border and threatened to destroy an entire colony of innocent people. Everything that happened here today happened because of that choice." Draxum's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, unable to argue against the simple truth of her words. "We are not interested in conquest," Whitlock continued. "We never have been. But we will not be underestimated, and we will not allow our people to be threatened without consequence. I hope today makes that clear, not just to you, but to whoever you answer to." "It does," Draxum said quietly, the words costing him visibly. "I underestimated you. All of you. I mistook quiet caution for weakness, and it cost me my entire fleet." Fleet Marshal Yalon stepped forward slightly. "Admiral, if I may, I would like to understand more of your tactics, not to plan future conflict, but to ensure my people never make this same mistake again, with you or with anyone else." Whitlock studied him for a moment, sensing genuine sincerity behind the request. "I can arrange that," she said. "Knowledge shared honestly tends to prevent far more wars than it starts." Nearby, watching the exchange from a respectful distance, Ambassador Celis felt something close to relief settle over her for the first time in days. She had feared this battle would end in nothing but destruction and bitterness. Instead, it seemed, at least the possibility of understanding had survived alongside it. In the days that followed, word of the battle spread quickly across neighboring systems, carried first by fleeing survivors and later confirmed by Ambassador Celis's own detailed reports. Other species who had long assumed humanity's small, quiet outposts were simply undefended and vulnerable began quietly reconsidering any similar plans they might have had. Back aboard the Steadfast, life slowly returned to its normal, quiet rhythm. Lieutenant Priya Anand found herself standing beside Commander Rourke on the bridge as the last of the alien survivors were escorted safely toward transport vessels for their journey home. "Do you think they'll try again?" she asked. "Somewhere else, maybe, thinking we'll be caught off guard next time?" Rourke considered the question carefully before answering. "Maybe," he admitted, "but not soon, and not carelessly. Whatever else happened here, I think we made them think twice." Priya nodded, watching the drifting wreckage slowly being cleared from the corridor by recovery teams. "It's strange," she said. "A week ago, this was just an empty, forgotten stretch of space. Now it's the place where an entire invasion fleet learned not to underestimate us." "That's usually how it happens," Rourke said quietly. "Nobody remembers the empty, quiet places until something happens there that changes everything." Far above Meridian Station, the colony's civilians slowly emerged from their shelters, looking up at skies that were, for the first time in days, calm and clear. They would never know the full details of the battle fought to protect them, the careful planning, the patient deception, the precise, controlled violence required to turn certain defeat into decisive victory. All they would know, in the end, was that they were safe. And far across the galaxy, in council chambers and command centers belonging to species who had never given humanity much thought before, a quiet, careful message began to spread. Do not mistake their patience for weakness. Do not assume their silence means fear. Whatever you believe about humanity's strength, remember this. They have made stronger enemies regret far smaller mistakes than the one you are about to make.